Namaste everyone and a warm welcome to the 7th edition of the webinar series on COVID and South Asia, organized by South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment in association with Biduni Institute, Afghanistan, Center for Policy Dialogue, Bangladesh, Research and Information System for Developing Countries, India, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Pakistan, and Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka. Today's theme is Lessons for Cooperation on Climate Change, South Asia's Concerns. In the last several sessions of this webinar series, we have discussed COVID's impact in relation to foreign direct investment, e-commerce, migration and remittances, and tourism. We have before us a set of eminent panelists today. Today's discussion is around a broader theme, climate change, which is a bit closer to the topics of the first two sessions, which were on implications of COVID for the world order and for globalization through South Asian lens. One motivation for identifying this theme of climate change for today was that among the lessons of COVID is the need for cooperation and collaboration among nation states to cope with the health crisis as well as the economic fallout from COVID. Cooperation that has been observed so far leaves much to be desired. Just recall the mad scramble for masks and heightened geopolitical rivalry. And climate change, being a global public good or rather global public bad, whose effects will be seen even after COVID becomes history, it is confronted with a collective action problem, which requires a high level of global cooperation. But will geopolitical rivalries that have been sharpened by the pandemic play spoilsport on the climate cooperation front? On the other hand, even amid the gloom of the pandemic, as governments and individuals look out for silver linings and opportunities, there is discussion of leveraging government responses, for example, for fiscal transfers towards greening economies. With this brief motivation, let me introduce today's eminent moderator, Dr. Prabhu Burathoki, adjunct professor of the Institute of Forestry, Tribhuvan University, is a former member of the National Planning Commission of the Government of Nepal. He has over 3 decades of active experience in the field of environment, climate change, natural resource management, and sustainable development planning and management. He has a wide range of working experiences in the government, UNDP-GEF, Food and Agriculture Organization, INGOs and NGOs in Nepal, Iran, Bangladesh, and the UK in senior positions. For example, he served as a country representative of the International Conservation Union, IUCN in Nepal, and as chief technical advisor of UNDP and FAO projects in various countries. He is an active member of various national and international organizations and gives lectures in environment and development subjects in universities in Nepal and abroad. Dr. Burathoki strongly believes in holistic, resilient, and just development and the need for cooperation among societies and nations for the lasting well-being of humankind in this interconnected world. Without further ado, I hand it over to Dr. Burathoki.
Okay, thank you, Faraz Karelji, for a nice introduction. So I think I should not deserve, this long introduction myself. So first of all, this is my pleasure to moderate this session, having, eminent personalities, experts, and many participants. So the subject is a very wisely taken, and I hope that the panelists have been nicely chosen. So I think I also should take some time, maybe a few minutes, just to set the tune of whole this discussion. And then I'll introduce our panelists. So what I think is nowadays, the world is actually now we are sailing a Noah boat of humankind in the rough sea of COVID and the climate change. So any small mistakes we do may collapse our civilization. And don't you think it's very scary? So just to alarm all of us, before entering to this subject, so I'm just putting like this. It does not mean I'm pessimistic and I'm very hopeless. So, but coming to this region, so the South Asian region, now we're in the lap of Hindaku mountain region. and climatically and geographically and even culturally, we are so connected. We have common destiny, we have common culture in many ways. But the problem is, we are one of the least interconnected region in the world. Though we are very close, we are living like a oil and water in a bucket, living together but not linking properly. So this is the situation here. And this makes a lot of difference in the time of crisis like this. So today's subject is very, very important while we just go along. So another important thing we have to understand or remember is, I think most of you have read the book Collapse by Jared Diamond, written maybe some around 90s, I think. And what he says in his book, now if we collapse collectively. Unlike the previous collapse, just for example, this Indo Valley civilizations. So the world is so connected, we may collapse together if we cannot work collectively or together. So, but another very important thing is also, we have to remember here, the history of human civilization clearly shows us the human progress and human advancement was basically based on the cooperation among human beings. Though it is the hunting of mammoth in the Stone Age time, or just searching this extraterrestrial life in the universe. Whatever we achieved so far, it is basically by collaboration of human beings. So another important thing is, so this is a very defining moment. So based on this knowledge, whether you read the book of Yuval and the very latest book of Farid Zakaria, 10 lessons for the post-COVID world. Just a few days ago, the book was published. So they say that if we do not collaborate in the time of crisis, we will be in crisis itself. So that means from the history of human civilization, as well as the very current main thinkers of this time, it's very important, the popular thinker of this time, they are suggesting us the cooperation is key to our continuity of our survival and civilization. So with this background, now the title of today is very wisely chosen because the COVID and climate change, they are co-travelers because the human action which cause one can trigger another or contribute to another crisis. So if we can manage the COVID crisis properly during and the post-COVID, we can manage the climate crisis properly. Because I think if you have seen that sometime back, maybe last 2 months back, there was a very interesting cartoon in the Economist. So the human being was just, that the COVID was just, in the cartoon, the COVID was just trying to grab the human beings, but behind the COVID, there was a big wave, tsunami of climate crisis. So that means we are one crisis after another. So that the climate crisis could be unimaginable. This is we have to be careful. And the one lessons from the past pandemics have shown clearly, the more we prepare ourselves before crisis, the better we can cope the crisis. But the main reason why this COVID crisis is so alarming or so serious, because most of the countries have not been prepared, despite knowing all this will happen. And we all know, scientists will say, are saying the climate crisis is in the process. So we as a smart human being, if we do not prepare ourselves personally and collectively, we may be in a big problem in the future. So with this, and this why the South Asia, this COVID and climate crisis are very serious, because this South Asia region is one of the most vulnerable in terms of climate risks. Out of 5 top vulnerable or climate risk countries, 3 are in this region. India, Bangladesh first, India second, and the Nepal fourth. And in terms of COVID effect also, it is very interesting. The impact of COVID is also very serious in this region. So just to give you an example, about 21.5% of the COVID infected people are in South Asia. And the 12% of the death so far are from South Asia. The economy-wise also, this region is one of the most affected, maybe the most affected. For example, according to World Bank, so about the Maldives will lose up to 19.5% of its GDP, minus 19.5, and India minus 9.6. And it will have a wide range of effect in all aspects of development, in poverty, in even the health service, even fighting the climate and all these things. But we have very, very unique situation in this region, because the South Asia, among the South Asian countries, India is a big elephant in the room. So on the which side of which side it just rest will affect all other countries in the region. So the role of the initiative of India is very important. But unfortunately, one thing I should mention here before just ending my my just short introduction. Just like in April, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, did a very good took a very good initiative, just establishing a COVID response. I think this fund, and now so far now the nearly $22 million have been already pledged in. But interestingly, these money are not used properly, and India has just spent about around $2.3 million, giving some medical equipments to different SAARC countries. So that means the mechanism which we have are not functioning in the time of crisis. So imagine if we have a climate crisis in this region, how do we manage this collectively? So all these things are very, we have potentials, we have we have the necessity, and we cannot change our neighbor because we are all together, but we can change the way we govern. So that means the geography cannot be changed, but governance or the governing, the way we govern can be changed. So with this, taking with this mind, so I just want to stop, my just short introduction or just setting. And I just want to introduce our panelists. So today we have 5 people speaking. Dr. Eklapis Sharma, who is the Deputy Director General of ICIMOD, will be giving the keynote speech. And we have Dr. Eklapis Sharma, I think doesn't need any introduction. He's one of the well-known person in this region. He basically, he has been committed his whole life to the well-being of mountain and the mountain people. And he has established this Sikkim Regional center of GB Pant National Institute of Himalayan Environment, long time back, I think in the 90s. So he has been always committed. He's a person from the mountain region, having the mountain commitment of environment and human well-being. So Dr. Eklavya, you are most welcome. And let me just introduce all panel members and then you can give your keynote. So our next speaker would be Dr. Sabhakat Kakakhel, the ambassador and the former ambassador of Pakistan to India, and the former deputy executive director, and currently the chair of STPI, Social Development Pakistan Institute, right? So he is the man of a wide range of experience, from diplomacy to the ground level or grassroots level of development understanding. And he has just, he can bring us maybe the wide range of perspective in terms of COVID and climate change, and how diplomacy can work or should function in the time of crisis. So, and our third speaker is Dr. Tulsi Grung, the Dean of Academic Affairs, College of Natural Resources, Royal University of Bhutan. Where is Tulsi? I cannot see. Let our speaker,
I'll try to.
yeah, please open your video, please, so that people can recognize you properly.
Yes.
Excellent. So,
thank you.
And she is the dean, as I said, and she has PhD in agriculture from Konaken University in Thailand, and she has worked with ICIMOD and many other organizations, and she is basically working as working in the resilient building and adaptation and the mountain solutions initiatives. So she has a very good experience and expertise in the academic field as well as on the ground level. So I think she can bring a very good experience from Bhutan. And as I found this morning, just checked, how much money the India, Bhutan has been spending. It is the more nearly, more nearly how much? I think 10 times more than the Nepalese per capita in COVID. So this is one of the reasons why there is no any death. Congratulations. So the Bhutan is one of the countries where there is no casualty out of from the COVID so far. So it's very happy news. So we have another speaker, Dr. Lopa Saxena, Research Fellow, Center for Agroecology, Water and Resilient, Coventry University, UK. Basically, she's from India and has been teaching and doing a lot of research in the field of agriculture, climate change, gender, and socio-ecological system. And I found one very interesting areas of her work, social supermarkets. So she may be bringing to us different aspects of food security, climate change, and its impact on poverty and hunger. So welcome Lopa Saxena in this webinar. And our fourth speaker would be Dr. Atula Senaratne. Senaratne is here. Where are you, sir? Atula? Ah, yes, now he's here. So he's the research fellow and head of environment, economic policy research, Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka. And Dr. Atula is a very prominent person from Sri Lanka. And he is basically the experts and has a wide range of experience in different natural resource management, including the non-timber forest product to agriculture, to aquaculture, and he has been just doing various research, his connection to this climate change, and probably he can bring the good experience of from Sri Lanka. So I cannot see the somebody from Bangladesh. Can I see? No. Okay. So with this, so let me now just give floor to Dr. Yaklabeji. Please, Dr. Yaklabe, floor is yours. And as you just setting the rules, you will get 10 minutes, sir. And around 7 to 8 minutes, then I'll just give you just alarm, not alarm, just give you the click, and then you'll get more 2 minutes more and just finish your talk. And for the rest of the other speakers, they will get maximum 8 minutes. Around 6 minutes, I'll give you just alarm. So thank you, sir. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Prabhu Burathoki, the chairperson of this session, very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate and also appreciate the efforts of Southie and inviting me to make a presentation today. We are focusing in South Asia, and this region is one of the global hotspots if we look at the climate change. And why it is a global hotspot? Because of the mountains, and Dr. Burathoki also mentioned about it, on the laps of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, right from Hindu Kush to Karakoram, Pamir, then the Tibetan Plateau, the Himalayas, and then we go to Chittagong Hill Tracts of Bangladesh, and then further to Myanmar and Three Gorges of Yunnan of China. So this is the area, the region, very, very important. And if you look globally, this region is also a very highly populated region. So what happens in the mountains has huge impact on the downstream. So very much that connection it can be provided by many, many things. One is water. That's why we call it H2O, Himalaya to ocean. So we have Sri Lanka, Maldives, all these, we have countries downstream, but Himalaya is the one which is impacting very much. So in Paris in 2015, we agreed globally that the climate action is very, very important. And we need to keep the world below 2 degrees centigrade. And if we keep 1.5 degrees centigrade, this region is going to be already much hot. So the HKS, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, is much hotter at 1.5 degree. With the current emission, I can tell you the temperature in some parts of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is going to rise by 5.5 degree. That means the climate-related hazards like glacial lake outbursts, the floods, the flash floods, even the landslides, and then because of air circulation and climate-related issues, we might have more of the storms, cyclones in this region. So this is a very, very serious. Once the climate and temperature is affected, it is affecting many, many things. So for that region, and this is a highly populated region, I know, and one of the poorest region in the world. So there is suddenly, if there is a risk, poorest and the people who are at the fringe of development gets more, I think, are more in risk and vulnerable situations. So in that context, I think region is very, very important. So what are the key elements? One is temperature rise, definitely. But if you look at the heat waves, in recent times, the heat waves from the plain areas of South Asia are actually increasing and expanding, and it is going in the summer season even into the mountains. That means that is another huge factor. Then with the climate change, the air pollution is also a very important factor. I think we should all understand what is the regional nature of air pollution in South Asia. We have many sources, industries, brick kilns, we have automobiles, all dirty energy which are used actually add to air pollution. And there are climate, short-lived climate forces. We have other like black carbon and many pollutants we see that is actually circulated within the region, and also it goes to the mountains. So in that context, I think the parameters like heat wave, air pollution, the temperature rise, unprecedented rainfall, we see large intensity and frequency of floods, we can see droughts. All these are some of the climate-induced disasters which we are seeing. That means people are at much more risk. In this context, when all the governments, after signing Paris Agreement and trying to achieve the SDG goals, then all of a sudden gets a disruption, and that disruption comes from COVID. So in this disruption, I think what is the biggest danger that I see, we totally focus just on COVID and we forget the main crisis, which is a so slow poison. We cannot see in the long term, short term, very clearly what the climate is impacting. But we have to see in a very systematic way. But in case of COVID, you will see, oh, so many people have died. But maybe much more people are already dying because of climate-related disasters, climate-related crisis. So I think this is something which we have to see. Because of COVID, we should not forget and we should not limit that part. We should take climate action together. So this is the first thing that I would like to say. And we have done, ICIMOD has done the policy paper on COVID-19, the impact and the policy responses. And we have looked into economic, food security and nutrition issues, social dimension, gender issues. The environmental and climate action and resilience is very, very important. That is also covered by this. Then policy response by the countries and the regional cooperation, and then international support and cooperation in this context. So there we have looked into the impact, we have looked into the risk and vulnerabilities because of COVID in these systems. And then of course, actions in short-term, long-term and medium-term actions. Focusing on climate change and environment, I think one of the biggest things that we have observed recently is the degradation of ecosystems. And because of COVID, there is increasing illegal trade and spread of diseases from wildlife. The genetic disease, the COVID itself has come from the animal. How the interactions and link with the environment, the ecosystem is very, very important and critical. We have seen there is an improvement in air quality, but that may be a short term. Once the economic activities starts again, you can see already in Delhi, there is a news that the pollution is rising very much. Yesterday, I heard 2.5 has reached more than 200. So it is very, very critical that the short-term things should be also looked into so that when we build back, I think we should take that very much. I think demand for water has increased and clean water. Because of the pandemic, I think we are using more water and we need more clean water in South Asia, which is a huge problem. Then, of course, reducing this water-induced disasters are going to be quite important in environment. Then increased amount of medical waste, which is coming. How we are going to treat that is going to be quite challenging. So for this region, I think restoration of degrading ecosystems so that the spread of disease all can be controlled. I think investment in research on socio-ecological interaction is also critical and important. But really looking into the climate, I think actions and resilience, mountain people and the South Asian people are in the forefront of climate change. Whether it is the impact of cyclones and all those frequency, intensity is huge. But with the COVID-19 challenges, I think this whole thing will be aggravated. So both coming together, there will be more risk and issues. Then suddenly in terms of action, climate scaling up of smart social protection system to help the people in this region can absorb future shocks. I think this is something which we have to work very soon. Establish a climate investment fund, which was mentioned for a regional COVID fund, but I think we should have a regional climate fund to really see wherever there is a smaller countries, they need support and, for this region. And then also to protect people and enhance ecosystem services, because this is the lifeline. If you look at the food security, which is coming from the Indus, Ganga, Brahmaputra, and some of these rivers originating from Himalaya, it caters to 3 to 4 billion, half of humanity. That means this region is very, very critical and important. And if I look at some of the things which we should do in terms of climate action, is the scale of social protection system, then a nature-based solution. I think this is something which, when we talk about climate, this has to come up front. Then, of course, inclusive and I think climate, we have to see financial systems put into place, and many of the entrepreneurship based on nature-based solutions could be promoted and taken further. Then, of course, resilient entrepreneurship ecosystem has to be developed in this region, so that environment and economic development and climate, all these three pillars are taken together in terms of forward very much and taking it forward. Then we should have resilient infrastructure development. I think this is a good time when there is a disruption by COVID, we can think, discuss, and this infrastructure has to be more resilient rather than very much the one which we don't consider nature. So suddenly I think sustainable and inclusive labor markets, because the labor force, the climate action has to be connected. Lots of people are migrating out of the region. Now they have come back. So there is immense pressure on natural resources. So looking into all of these, I think policy responses are going to be very important. Regional cooperation, countries have to cooperate because something happens into one country is going to have impact to the other. So actions for an inclusive and resilient post-pandemic recovery, when we are thinking, then suddenly I think we need to have evidence-based policy making. I think that is the only thing which we can, and we have enough information. And there are many books and assessments that have been done. I think we don't have to worry much about that. Then we have to have a strategic communication very much among the governments, between various stakeholders. Then we said institutional arrangement. I mean, Dr. Burathoki talked about this regional fund has been created in April, but somehow we don't have this institutional arrangement to use it in the optimum level. So how we can do that is also a policy question for all of us to look at. The policy and regulatory instruments for climate action and climate resilience are going to be quite important. When we talk about climate, let's not forget about economic measures, because livelihoods of the people are quite central whenever we talk about economic, climate also. Finally, I think I have to say regional cooperation is quite critical and important. And in my opinion, more focus in terms of climate for future is we need to really see the nature, and nature-based solutions have to be taken forward. So for instance, if you take example of floods, so in many cases, whenever the flood comes, what the action is, so okay, we'll build, tame the river. We try to do the gibbon or all the structures we provide to the river side. But we never think how we should actually manage our catchment areas, how we can protect our watersheds, how much of the water can be retained by the forest and by the agriculture land, agroforestries in the mountains. So these are the nature-based solutions. And whenever we think of floods, we simply think of some construction rather than really look into nature and ecosystems. I think this is the...
Dr. Eklave, just 2 minutes left, please.
Yes. So if you look at this, this is very, very important for me, the link very much to the nature-based solutions. So another very important link that I see for climate is that more people are in this region are going to face the climate related migration. So if our coastal areas are going to be submerged, they will be moving to other areas. So how are we prepared to such, because this is a highly populated area, people are very poor. You have seen during the COVID, when the crisis came, many people started walking and going to different their home places. So in that, I think proper designing and thinking in terms of what happens if the climate-related migration happens in this region, how the countries are going to be cooperating. So this is one very critical thing I would like to bring. The other is that the resources, because of climate crisis, as it is happening slowly, and it might happen more in future with a greater intensity, then water is going to be critical. So what are the things that we are going to do? How water-related issues, water quality, we have to see. Many countries have already agreed to Paris agreement. So how much we are doing in terms of not using the bad energy, the coal, the other energy which actually emits so much of pollution and then greenhouse gases. How much of our countries are putting effort in terms of converting to clean energy, safer energy for cooking. In the mountains, I can tell you 80% of people are still depending on biomass, which adds smoke and pollutants to the atmosphere. So these are some of the big challenges that we see.
Because you have to close it out, please.
Yes, because of the climate, these are the huge issues: energy, water, climate-related migration, very much, and then regional cooperation are some of the major elements that I think we should keep in mind. With this, I would like to stop here, and maybe in some discussion, I will come with more points. But I'm very glad that this topic of climate change and pandemic has been put together to think and ponder how we should move forward. Climate action, climate cannot be ignored in the emergency of COVID. They have to go together. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Aklabi. Just giving some insight of the wider issues in related to this climate change and pandemic. So anyway, the main solution of all these crises is regional cooperation. So now I want to just invite Dr. Ambassador Safakat Kakakel. So I just want to say, based on the experience of COVID management, how we can increase regional cooperation, at least when there is a climate crisis. I think this is the key subject we are discussing. So maybe I just want to request Dr. Safakat to focus on this part, and you will get about maximum 8 minutes, sir. And after 5 minutes, I'll just give you a small notice, and then you can get another few minutes. Thank you, sir. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, what I intend to do is briefly refer to 4 lessons that we can draw from how Pakistan dealt with coronavirus, with COVID-19. And I will then say a few words about climate change and also regional cooperation. Now, as far as COVID-19 and climate change are concerned, there is no causal relationship between them. They are 2 different phenomena, but in terms of the impacts, there are similarities between COVID-19 and climate-induced disasters such as floods or hurricanes. Basically, when COVID-19 hit Pakistan, like most developing countries, we were not prepared. We were not prepared for the sudden problem which affected all regions, all cities, all towns of the country. And we found that our facilities were not adequate. But the government the government mounted a campaign, and within a few weeks, we managed to improvise a reasonably effective response. And the government's focus in regard to COVID-19 was primarily to save lives and secondarily to save livelihoods. These twin objectives continue to shape our actions regarding COVID-19, which continues. The problem has not gone, but we can even at this stage draw some lessons. The first lesson from COVID-19 is have the resilience to deal with the difficulties caused by a disaster. And when COVID-19 hit Pakistan, we found that our facilities, the number of hospitals, the number of testing laboratories, the location of hospitals, the facilities available in them, for instance, the number of intensive care units where we could isolate people, and equipment such as ventilators were grossly inadequate. So the government mounted a campaign to get support in the form of equipment, and with the help of time-tested friends like China and also a number of other countries, we were able to put together a reasonably impressive healthcare system, which has served us quite well. The second lesson from COVID-19, which will also be valid for climate change related disasters and disruptions, is have your institutional arrangements for coordination, domestic coordination. Now, when COVID-19 came, Pakistan, the government realized that although as far back as 2010, it had put together an impressive disaster risk reduction framework and policy, it had also created a mechanism for coordination, a commission which was headed by the Prime Minister and included chief ministers and senior officials. But this commission had not met for more than 2 years and had not developed a manual of how it will coordinate efforts when a natural disaster visits Pakistan.
Ambassador Kakakhel, you have 2 minutes more, sir.
What happened in Pakistan, the civilian and military officials sat together and they put together a national command and operation center, which has been extremely effective. They work with the district authorities, and the deputy commissioners are in charge of their own districts, and but the central direction comes from the National Command and Operational Center. I would like to suggest to all South Asian countries to look at the WHO guidance on health-related disasters and how to look after the lives of people when a similar disaster comes. The third lesson is identify and support the most vulnerable communities and individuals. And most of our countries have some social nets which provide support to the very poor and those who cannot go to the market, who have nothing to do with the market because the market doesn't offer them anything, or they're not able to make use of the facilities, opportunities available in the market. So we had, for instance, Benazir Income Support Program. So Pakistan increased the allocations for that, and also a new program which was being considered. It's called Ehsaas. That was launched. So Pakistan has been able to support millions of families, and through these two cash payment system. The fourth lesson that is, I think, valid for all South Asian countries is make effective use of information technology as well as social media to provide guidance to people. So in Pakistan, if you call a friend of yours before he or she picks up, you get guidance on what you should be going about COVID. Is there a risk in the area where you live and all? So basically these are lessons. As far as climate change is concerned, I think Dr. Sharma spoke. All South Asian countries are highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. All are developing countries, and although some have made impressive progress in reducing poverty and achieving socio-economic development, there are still, South Asia is home to perhaps still the majority of the poor people in the world. And it's the poor people who are
Mr. Ambassador, the time is just a few seconds. Please, can we finish?
Basically, we need to, we share the Himalayas, we share even Karakoram with Afghanistan, we share Hindu Kush, and we have our own national plans and strategies for dealing with climate change, but it is now recognized that all regions can benefit and should benefit from cooperation with one another. Now, if we look at the situation of cooperation in South Asia, as far back as 1983, we set up a mechanism called SASEP, South Asia Cooperative Management of Environment, and Sri Lanka provided the headquarters. The South Asian countries, SAARC countries, pay for SASEP. But nobody knows about SASEP, nobody cares about SASEP. Then, of course, we have the principal mechanism, which is SAARC, which again has done a lot in climate change. In 2008, we had a Dhaka meeting, and the same year, the summit approved the plan of action that was prepared by the ministers. But none of the South Asian countries at the Copenhagen conference, this basically was in anticipation of the Copenhagen summit, which was supposed to deliver a new agreement on climate change. None of our leaders or heads of delegation referred to the decisions of Dhaka. We had the summit in tempo, which was devoted to climate change and which took a number of important decisions. And but there were 4 major initiatives that the summit launched.
I think, please, can you stop now? Maybe you can add, 4 more points when we discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Now I just go to another speaker without losing time. So this is Dr. Tulsi Gurung from Bhutan. Please, ma'am, this is floor is yours. Please just try to stick on time and just try to focus on the, the key issue, how much we can learn from COVID to promote regional cooperation to tackle climate change crisis if it happens. This is, I think, core issue.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, excellent. I'm hearing you properly.
Honorable Deputy Director Isimod, Executive Director Swati, fellow speakers and webinar participants, a very warm greeting from Bhutan. And I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak on the COVID-19 lessons for cooperation on climate change, South Asia's concerns. I will briefly talk on what Bhutan as a country has learned through this COVID-19 pandemic and these lessons which could be applied to climate crisis, which shares a marked similarity, both presenting potentially devastating global problems, therefore the need for regional and global cooperation. I would like to give a brief status of the COVID cases in Bhutan as of today. There are 309 confirmed cases, of which only 18 are active now, and 291 has recovered. And as Burathokiji has already mentioned, there is 0 fatality. And Bhutan is able to contain the pandemic to this level mainly because of the great leadership and the good governance. Therefore, COVID-19 has taught us the role of leadership and good governance in managing the pandemics. Bhutan, under the leadership of His Majesty the King, managed to put very effective mechanisms to contain the pandemic and as well as manage socio-economic issues. So leadership was able to unite the nation to bring collective effort. All sections of the society, including the farmers, monk bodies, private sectors, military, volunteer groups, government agency, all of us came together to work as one family. Early and apt action was taken, learning from the experiences of the other countries, which is because of the good leadership and governance that we have. Similarly, addressing climate change would also require leadership that can unite citizens together within the country and also collaborate at regional and global level. Another lessons that we have learned in Bhutan as a Bhutanese, I would say that Bhutanese are now fully convinced of the consequences of various impacts, whether it is to do with the pandemics or the climate related disaster. Being a very small landlocked country with huge dependency on food as well as on other essential items from neighboring countries. Bhutan has started working vigorously on the domestic production of agriculture goods to reduce dependency. Bhutanese people have really realized what we have been doing till now, depending totally on the imports. And now all the people, starting from the government bodies to the farmers, we have started working what we can do at our own level. With pandemics, countries have started to close their borders and major trade were disrupted. At these critical times, Bhutan still received unwavering support from the neighbors, which shows the further need for strengthening the cooperation and goodwill among the neighboring countries. Similarly, impacts of climate change transcends national boundaries. It requires collective effort to address these impacts. Climate crisis is in fact far more, more difficult to confront than the current pandemic, as the dynamics of climate change is very hard to grasp, although impacts are already being felt by the Bhutanese communities. We have seen the glaciers melting, we have seen the floods, we have seen the storms damaging houses and crops. So it is already felt by the Bhutanese communities. However, this pandemic has really made us realize what could happen to us if we are not acting from now only. Bhutan has also learned how to go digital to this information, to adapt or adopt this information technology. What was tried for many years and could not be achieved.
2 minutes left for you.
Okay, was achieved within few months. This is truly special for education sector. We're able to adapt fairly well with the online teaching learning. This is preparing us for the climate change impact also. Bhutanese youths have started to take blue-collar jobs, which they would have never done before. And now the tourism sector, which was hardest hit, and the employers and employees are looking for alternatives such as group Nekor, that is the tourism within the country that was never thought about before. Therefore, overall, this pandemic has taught many lessons to the Bhutanese and prepare for the climate crisis too. Such platforms to share knowledge among the international institution is very important. Learning from the lessons learned during the COVID-19 crisis could enhance efforts in fighting global climate. This is what I would like to share, and I would like to respond to the questions later. This is from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tulsi. Nice presentation and very concise experience you shared with us. So it is quite useful and helpful also. So may I now invite Dr. Lopa Saxena to give her deliberation. So before this, now she is the last speaker, and then we'll just open the floor. I request anybody interested to question any of the panelists, please drop your question or just raise your hand, then I will entertain you. Thank you. Please, Lopa.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Soti, for giving me this opportunity to present today's seminar. And also thanks to speakers who have gone before me for their insightful presentations. Now, I know the time slot seems to have been reduced now because of the time constraints, so I'll just quickly go through the things that I want to say and then maybe take up the questions later on. The two key points, I think, which has come up from this particular crisis that we are facing now, it started as a public health crisis, but as we all know, it has become an economic and employment and social crisis, which is with an unprecedented impact on all aspects of life. And this presents a big challenge for the entire world and definitely for South Asia as a region. The two key points to start off with, that one, it has highlighted the interconnected nature of this global systemic risks, and it has exposed the significant vulnerabilities. And the second point was that the crisis does not impact everyone equally. I came across a statement in somebody in a newspaper article recently, which I really liked. It said, while we all may be weathering the same storm, we are actually in all very drastically different boats. So which actually means that those with the least resources are disproportionately hit and they are most disadvantaged. Now I'm entering this discussion from a food systems approach, which is my research area. Now food systems, just to make it clear, includes the different elements, which means the inputs, the people, the environment, the processes, the institutions, the infrastructures, etc., and the activities that related to production, processing, distribution, consumption, and even the disposal of food, and the outputs of these activities, and also the outcomes from these activities, which could be health, livelihood, and nutrition, food and security, of course. So in the current policy discourse, the food systems and their health, economic, environment, and sociocultural outcomes are high on the sustainable development agenda. So what has COVID's impact been on the food systems? Now, looking at the impact in terms of food and nutrition security, we have very little understanding of the full extent and the magnitude so far. However, some studies are coming up, beginning to come up now, and there's a study from the Southeast Asian nations by FAO, which says that because of the significant social distancing, the lockdowns, the travel and trade disruptions, there has been serious reduction in the activities across the food system, and seriously affecting smallholder livelihoods, small farmers, traders, and so on. Now, in the context of South Asia, where small livelihoods predominate, I'm sure we can safely assume that the impact on food and nutrition security must be extremely high. Many more millions, I would suggest, must have been driven into food insecurity and food poverty in recent months, and this is a major development challenge for the region. Furthermore, food inequalities and health inequalities, they go together, so which adds to the precarity of the situation. And I'm sure many of us must have seen the distressing scenes from India where labor migrants were returning back home. They didn't have any food along the way and not much even to have even after reaching home. I think these will remain etched in our collective conscience in terms of the injustices and the inequities we have in our economies. So the crisis has exposed the vulnerabilities in our economies and the planning failures. So the important questions for me from my research area interest, and also which I think is particularly pertinent to our discussion, is how do we make sure enough healthy food is produced? And how do we make sure it reaches all? And how will the emergency food responses that we have now in place change over time? What type of regional and international cooperation we can look up to in order to assess these challenges? And how can food systems be made more resilient to such crises? And of course, we have these short-term, hopefully short-term emergency like this pandemic, but also the longer-term risks that we are talking about imposed by climate change. So it's sure that we are living with uncertainty for a long time. So how do we make our food systems resilient? So resilient food systems are described as those which have the capacity to withstand shocks, to disturbances, and to changes. They have the capacity to adapt and even to transform, but recognizing reorganizing in ways that maintains their essential functions, the identity, and the structure. So in this context, I'll share some key insights from my research on millets-based biodiverse farming systems in Odisha, in India. It's a state along the east coast of India, and I think it's very much known in terms of the extent that it suffers from natural disasters, floods, droughts, and cyclones. So what I found during my research on these millets, that they were historically and traditionally consumed by people in that region, and it was part of a diversified local small-scale farming systems, but they had declined over the decades, and now there has been efforts to revive these type of biodiverse farming systems led by civil society action and supported by the Indian government and the state government, by market actors, to bring back. And the focus is much more on bringing more lands into millets cultivation, how to provide the incentives and supports in marketing and trading, and also increasing the consumption in both the rural and the urban areas of Odisha. And maybe it has also been added to the public distribution system under the National Food Security Act in India 2013. So what are the key findings which I want to point out from this research was these farming systems, they were very resilient to weather extremes, and they are also carbon efficient. They contributed to food and nutrition security throughout the year. And more importantly, they also enhanced agro-biodiversity. Biodiversity, as we know, is very critical. It underpins all food production. It's the basis for soil fertility. It's the basis for pollination, pest control, and all the other aspects without which, the food production capacities is completely undermined. In South Asia itself, we have a long history of a wide array of agricultural systems.
Dr. Saxena, you have just 1.5 minutes left, please.
Yeah, so we have these, and South Asia is almost called the cradle of agroforestry. So we have incredibly rich and diverse ecosystems with locally evolved and accumulated traditional knowledge of farmers since hundreds of years. And the fact that they've persisted and survived over these years shows their resilience. However, at the same time, they are smallholders. Much of the agricultural production in the region, we know, is limited to small holdings, very small holdings, and sometimes by vulnerable groups of women. So small hurdles, and as I've discussed before, the ability to bear risks is not the same across all groups. So it's definitely low among those vulnerable. So, and food security, in fact, has been a priority issue in South Asia for a long time. There's no doubt about that. But it has been almost narrowly constructed in the forms of increasing food production. However, from a food systems perspective, we are looking at all the actors and all the activities across the food system, which is not simply about producing more, but making sure everybody has access to healthy, culturally acceptable, and nutritious food. And there's a growing recognition that such symptoms, which are locally co-evolved, locally designed, with local control over seeds and land and other productive resources, can sustainably reduce poverty and end hunger and malnutrition. And of course, I talked before the connections to climate change as well. And so clearly, if we need cooperation, it should be in supporting and rebuilding of this local small-scale food systems, and say win-win scenario. For example, through partnerships, through alliances, through multi-stakeholder engagement, building the capacities of actors across the food system, and improving markets and trading, strengthening of local institutions, and building cross-scale exchanges, and also targeting.
Sorry, Dr. Opa, can you just stop please now? I think, is there any specific point you want to add?
No, I just want to say that for the key point for the research communities is how do we make best use of the opportunity that COVID has presented now to make sure that we can make our food systems much more equitable, sustainable, and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. So sorry, just one correction, because we have another speaker left from Sri Lanka. I just said before that she was the last. So I just want to invite Dr. Atula Sinaratne from Sri Lanka, just to give your points of view in this issue, please.
Thank you, Chair. And
so you'll also get 8 minutes, and around 5-6 minutes, I'll just give you a call.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and of course, Swati to invite me for this very important panel. So I would try to narrow down my focus and of course to concentrate on few areas that is developed on our recent experience on as a climate change researcher and policy expert who is working closely with the government in Sri Lanka, climate change issues. So I would like to share my experience with this group, how these two seemingly separate phenomena can work. So as earlier speaker, one of our earlier speakers mentioned, this two COVID-19 and climate change are two separate phenomena. So they seemingly they don't have any link connection, even on the scientific grounds. But I think the real connection in this climate change comes when it comes to the interaction of human suffering. So I think climate change comes to South Asia, especially for poor people in South Asia, as a kind of a double blow. So we know that the poor people who are suffering from these disasters connected to climate change, and then of course this is topped up by this pandemic shock. So that I think real issue comes there because this COVID-19 brings double blow to the poor people. So taking from my experience in Sri Lanka has offered a reasonably formidable response to this COVID-19. We managed with 13 fatalities so far, but we are undergoing some kind of second wave. Hopefully that government would be able to handle it. But despite that, we observed that its impact is felt everywhere. So very frankly speaking, that Sri Lanka's the main income source, this migration, so that it is drastically affected by COVID-19, and especially those who are earning precious foreign exchange for Sri Lanka in Middle East has to return. So, and of course, then it completely dried out the tourism. So this basic issue, so what is it's connected in the economic front inside. So what I observe in case of Sri Lanka's experience, maybe it could be the experience in other countries as well in the South Asia, most likely that COVID-19 with its health impact and cost could very much crowding out the climate finance. So I think that could be a very drastic issue, because we know that COVID-19 will not resolve the, even though it we have seen some illusory visions about that lockdown has decreased the air pollution and all. We all know that is temporary. So then in the long run, it would crowding out this climate finance, both mostly for mitigation as well as adaptation. So definitely it will affect the adaptive capacity in our countries. And then most likely that it will disintegrate policy development, which is gradually developing in South Asia when it comes to the offering the climate response. So that's the major challenge we have to take care. So on the other hand, in the areas like mitigation, where that mostly Sri Lanka is a low per capita emission country, but still Sri Lanka is trying to offer some good response to mitigation front. So with the support of donor funding, but there is a possibility of trying out this international support for that area also. So because we know that the donor committee also affected severely by this factor. So with that remarks, I would like to go for the final say that Chair mentioned about this collaboration or cooperation, which is the last thing that we have been seeing from this starting of this challenge. So as in the top level, we observed that geopolitical rivalry, or that superpower rivalry is rising. So that is one side of it. So then naturally it creates the isolation, so social distancing and all. So therefore offering a collective response is which is required at the time, but it is very difficult. So that's a kind of dilemma that we are facing at the moment. So I think this is an experience shared by most of South Asian countries. Finally, that I would like to give very one positive area that we learned from there, that application of this technology. So one area that I have observed that face this challenge in resilient manner is this IT sector. So in Sri Lanka also that we have a thriving or growing ICT sector. So that has been resilient quietly for this process. So I think one area that we need to get from this lesson, so learning from this COVID-19 is bringing this technological advancement to adjust to this double blow. I think with that remarks, I would like to stop my deliberation.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Atullah. It's perfect. So you just hit on time. Thank you. So now I think I just want to thank you all the panelists for their very precise and very useful thought. And probably the people who have listening to them might have just learned or picked up some good ideas and some sorts of strategy which we can develop in the post-pandemic area. So now I will open the floor, and just if there are anybody who wants to ask question to any particular speakers, or if they want to add something, they will get just 1 minute. Please, the floor is open.
I have 3 questions asked to me already in the chat. Should I?
Okay. So, okay, please your response. Okay.
Yeah, so there are.
So you know your question, right?
Yes, I know. There are 3 questions
Excellent.
for me from Yog Upadhyay, who talks about the climate resilient infrastructure in South Asia. Any example, any initiative? I think one example I can give is that there had been huge hydropower, dam-based hydropower. So ultimately then in recent years, smaller hydropowers in a cascading way is being built. it has environmental implications in terms of biodiversity and like that, if you have cascading effect, but the huge, dam-based impact would have much bigger consequences because of disaster. So there are some examples, but I think our idea is to really move forward and bring that infrastructure which is really climate resilient. And I think we need to have more research also in this line. The next one is by Dr. Jagdish Pokhrel. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, about the regional cooperation in South Asia. I think my lessons learned, see, when you have a political system like SARC, then I think there is a lot of difficulty. And ICIMOD, more than 36 years, we have tried to cooperate. But now, day after tomorrow, there is a ministerial level. 8 countries are actually agreeing to work on the softer side. So climate, biodiversity, climate action. So it is possible very much if we take the softer side, and the mechanism has to be different. It cannot be a secretariat of 8 countries like that, but I think could be a platform of sharing and taking the lessons learned from the regional aspect to the countries, and countries can also provide. I think that mechanism is something which we are developing, and I'm very happy to say that all 8 countries are going to actually sign day after tomorrow. And that declaration talks about the SK's call to action and resilient recovery from COVID. So it is going to be a more science and policy link and related practice and action. I think this is what I think we should go, rather than very strict governmental institution or mechanism that we had in SARC. Then the last one is by Dr. Ganesh Casey, is talking about very much how the rich countries are polluting. And I think it is very, very clear that I think climate change in this region is mostly coming because of actions by very rich countries from outside. I think from our side, we have not contributed so much to climate change, but I think our people are more vulnerable, and they are facing the problem, and they are actually the victim of climate change. So in that context, I think our role is to really see how more investment comes to the poorest people in this region who are the victims of climate change. I think our whole discussion strategy needs to change in a way that I think those big polluters, big countries, I think they should invest more for the development in this region. That is the type of discussion. That's why our countries have to come and put the cause for this region, I think, at the global level for investment for doing works in this region. So these are some of the points was mentioned here as a question to me, and I hand over to Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any questions or any addition? Any further queries?
If I could add something, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma, for your insightful presentation. It was really, really good. Something what I was really interested on the subject matter was, the climate resilient infrastructure. You gave some example, and it looks like in a private level. What I'm really interested is if there is any governmental or the South Asian region sort of any initiatives on maybe on a policy or something. Here at Liverpool, we're working with a number of different actors within academia and outside academia, looking into how the modern technology could help on the climate resilient infrastructure. So I was interested to figure out if there is anything in South Asia like those things, and maybe, share the experience, learn from each other on that way.
So, okay, may I ask just to respond, Dr. Kaka Khale, maybe you may have better ideas about this, and then to Eklabe.
I, no, I'm not aware of what the questioner is asking. So,
Okay, Dr. Eklavya, can you just elaborate, please?
I think, I mean, there is a lot to do in this. This is a new thinking, a climate resilient infrastructure, new thinking. People also don't understand so much. I think as a researcher, you are already looking into this. But in my opinion, a big investment coming in South Asia on the clean energy is actually a movement towards that. So many places you see the solar energy in the airports. You'll see those blank areas, they are using solar energy. And some of the countries are now reducing coal and increasing to the solar energy. I think that is one example I can give. The other one was the dam versus the smaller hydro project. So there are few, but not really. I think this is the time, this is a new topic. We need to think what climate resilient infrastructure. I think this is the time for researchers and think tanks to come up with the proposals and then influence the government. I think we are in that stage at this moment.
There is one very interesting question to everybody, all panelists, from Dr. Keshav Bhattrai. So I think this is what should be common minimum rules for action or action for the countries in the region to solve the climate problem that you mentioned? What sorts of model are applying to assess the current and future scenarios? So I'll just give 1 minute to each panelist just to answer this question. This is a very important question. So who would like to start? Okay, Dr. Lopa, you want to respond to this question? Lopa is not in the scene. Can you just respond to this question, just 1 minute?
I think I would not be best placed to address this because essentially it is a much more a issue in politics. I think that it's a policy issues, I guess. It's all about what are the minimum rules or actions for the countries to solve this problem. And climate problem, like we said, because these are all transcendental issues, we cannot expect the market to solve. So obviously we are thinking about the involvement of the in the policies making good rules, but I wouldn't say what sort of models. I'm not clearly much more into the climate issue.
Thank you. Dr. Kaka, can you just explain? This is more political and then more very wide range address attracting wide range of stakeholders to respond to this question.
Well, basically, the civil society has to make greater efforts. First, to forge cooperative linkages among themselves, and then to try and persuade the governments to be more helpful when it comes to promoting regional cooperation.
Okay. So, Dr. Atula, the same question also from your side.
Yeah.
Can you just respond if you want?
The one thing that I can suggest here is that the South Asia is more prone to climate impacts than the contribution to the climate change in terms of GHG emissions. So therefore, definitely South Asian countries need to focus more on enhancing their adaptive capacity. The adaptive capacity is not, so the climate change still remains a peripheral issue. So to make it a real development problem, I think South Asian countries need to mainstream climate change into the development. So basically the adaptive capacity should be a part of the development strategy. So that should be the key, I think, to face this challenge. From
Okay. Dr. Eklavya, I think you may be the right person.
Yeah, it was interrupted. In fact, I lost the question also because I missed I will quickly.
May I read again?
Yeah, can you? Because there was.
What should be common minimum rules or action for countries in the region to solve the climate change problems that you mentioned?
I got it.
And what sorts of models are applying to assess the current and future scenario?
So the minimum rule is that all sections of the society have to work together. I think that is the minimum rule. if we have to work on, so if the government works and if others don't work, the model, very important model, is to bring the private sector on board. So much of the economic activities are happening in the region, which are not very much climate sensitive and climate. So how we bring the business and bring the business part of this mission. So that is very, very important. The model is the private public sector working together towards climate resilience.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions, please? I can see one. So there is a question from Ganesh Kesi to Dr. Lopa. Can you respond to him, please?
Yeah, I'm just reading it. It says, do you have any specific suggestions for small farmers in this situation to keep their livelihood moving based on your experience? In the particular case that I researched, their production was tied to public procurement systems. I'm talking about the research that I did in India, so how they fit into the public procurement, which was done by the state and towards increasing the supplies of food. So that was one of the ways they could keep their livelihood moving. And of course, as I said, it depends on how you look at how do you look at their farming. It's not simply in terms of their livelihood, but also in terms of their overall well-being. And there's in terms of practicalities, yes, it's about also creating small networks between themselves. I've seen that happening there. And then they have, well, the main objective for them is how to make sure that they have access to food and nutrition. And one of the parts of the livelihood, of course, being, like I said, one of the things which I came across there, that they were practically linked to other networks in terms of their marketing and consumption.
Thank you. So now I just request to host. The time is now just over. Is there anything, from host side you want to say, or should I just close, or somebody's closing? Anybody from the host?
Yes, Dr. Burathoki.
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
So we are just now the 5:30, right? So
yes.
Is there anything you want to wrap up, or I should just say something and just conclude it? Or any question, anybody, still there is something, just Jagdish Pokhrel and other people if they want to say.
If participants have any question, they can, they can post it on the chat.
Me, I've already due by 30 minutes in another webinar.
Okay. So if you have any final words to say, Dr. Burathoki, you can say, and we can wrap up.
Okay. So I just, take just a few minutes. So first of all, thank you for all this excellent deliberation. So it is from the wider perspective. So that we are trying to understand COVID and climate from different perspectives, from policy to diplomacy to the technical side to the rural and from food to geostrategy to everything. This is very good discussion. And I think this is an issue why also, yes, it affects everything. And from all sides, we have to support, or from all sides, we have to attack to solve this climate and the COVID issue. But one thing I just want to add here, what I was expecting, or we should, pull together maybe next discussion, how we can develop a good cooperation among the SAARC nations so that we can tackle collectively the problem like COVID and the climate. Because so far, even in the COVID also, there is least cooperation among the nations. And when the climate crisis happens, I don't know what will happen. So I think we have to think very carefully, because we are the people, we discuss with politicians, policymakers, and the business leaders, and even the common people. So we have to develop some sorts of understanding so that when the crisis hits to us in this region, we can work together. So because the SAARC, the ambassador from Pakistan, he said, no, it's not functioning. And even the COVID fund is just lying there, and we don't have any intuition how to flow this money. And virtually, we are not prepared at all. So the problem here is, how we just move from this pandemic to another pandemic or post-pandemic. So recently there is I think recently there was one survey by McCart. So how much, energy transition will be there? And they have given the different chances to different countries. So the India has only 4% chances to move to the clean energy. So recently they have already just given 21 coal mines in the Jharkhand area in a very subsidized cost or subsidized contract. So this means even we are not learning, and the climate and COVID from the COVID crisis we have not been learning very much in this region. So for example, instead of just mining coal and generating electricity, maybe Bangladesh and India can collaborate with Nepal and just invest hugely in the hydropower and take the energy from here instead of burning coal and generating electricity. Just one example like this. So that means we may not be moving to the better normal, but maybe we may be moving back to the same or even the bad normal to generate our economy or to boost our economy, and which would certainly impact or just boost climate crisis in the region. So the whatever we have just learned, listen here, the few things I think some of the good lessons from Bhutan. So this good leadership, good governance, and the early the early response to the crisis is the key to success. And there should be food security issue, self-reliant, and the supply of the food should be maintained. And but we have also learned that the impact would be disproportionate to the economic class or the other different sections of society. Poor may affect more. So we have to just prepare for this. And from the Pakistan side, the civil society, if the government is really accepted, or if people trust in government, the civil society and the people can support government in its call to support in the crisis. For example, they have generated a lot of resources from the public and also the different many equipments. So that means the trust of the government and the preparedness and taking care of the poor and the weaker section of the society, and certainly the long-term thinking of the crisis is very, very important. So with this, I think based on this, if we can just develop some good strategy to generate or to develop good cooperation among nations in SAARC region, maybe it will be the good output of this webinar. And probably from all sides, we'll talk to each other in our country with our politicians. Please don't just turn your back. Please come look towards each other and try to help, because we cannot escape our geography. We have to change how we govern our geography. Thank you. With this note, I'd like to thank you everybody and giving this opportunity to moderate, and especially thank you to Swati team. Thank you very much, and namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Burathoki, and thank you all the panelists, as well as the keynote speaker and all the participants. Let me take this opportunity. Okay, let me take this. I just want to take this opportunity to announce that we would like to invite you all to the final edition in this webinar series. Same time on Friday, 16th of October. The theme is Future of Development Finance. And there is also, again, an eminent lineup of speakers. Thank you all, and namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tulsi ji.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.